let's talk adding and subtracting decimals. Now, when it comes to adding and subtracting decimals, kids seem to get really confused just because there is a decimal point in the problem. But the thing is, truthfully, that it's just the same thing as adding and subtracting normally, just with a decimal point in there. So here is our example problem. We have 15 and 75/100 plus 8 and 16/100. So when you are adding and subtracting decimals, the very first thing that you need to do is line them up by the decimal point. So I have 15 and 75/100, and now I'm just going to take 8 and 16/100 and line them up by the decimal point. So I can go ahead and throw that right there. Then we have 8 and 16/100. And now I'm just going to add them like I normally would. But one thing that some kids like to do, and I think it helps sometimes, is when there's like an empty space right here, it helps to put in something called a placeholder 0. So placeholder zeros only go on the outsides of numbers. Like let's say that there was nothing right there. I could put a 0 here or a 0 here in order to make the problem visually easier to solve. So let's go ahead and just solve this normally. So we have 5 plus 6 gives me 11. We have 1 plus 7 plus 1 gives me 9. Now I'm going to bring down my decimal point. 5 plus 8 gives me 13. 1 plus 1 gives me a 2. So I have 23 and 91/100. Now I'm going to do another problem, but this one's going to be a subtraction problem, so we can see what that looks like. And I'm going to make us put in some placeholder zeros so we can see what they look like. All right, so now we have the problem of 62 and 7/10 minus 18 and 65/100. So I'm going to take my larger number, which is right here, which is 62 and 7/10. And now I'm going to take 18 and 65/100 and put it right underneath. Now, as you can see, our problem currently looks a little weird. We have this blank space right here, but we have a number that we need to subtract from something. So this is a case of where we would definitely use a placeholder 0. So I'm going to put a 0 right here. This 0 doesn't change the value of this number at all. It's just so we can easily subtract. So now we have 0 minus 5. We can't do that, so we need to regroup. So now we have 10 minus 5, which gives us 5. 6 minus 6 gives us 0. Bring down my decimal point. 2 minus 8 we can't do, so again we regroup. Now we have 12 minus 8 gives me 4, and 5 minus 1 gives me 4 as well. So now we have 44 and 5/100. Sometimes when we don't put in oh my goodness, when we don't put in those placeholder zeros, sometimes kids will mix up how they're subtracting. They might line up their numbers like this instead. Because they think that they need to have their numbers lined up on the edge there. But that's why it's important to remind kids to, first of all, line them up by the decimal point and use placeholder zeros when you need them so that we don't get confused. All right, let's go ahead and do 2 practice problems. And then that is going to be it for now. All right. So we have 15 and 31/100 plus 7 and 6/10. So I'm going to take my first number, write it right here. Now I'm going to take the second number and I'm going to line it up by the decimal point. So we have 7 and 6/10. And we are adding. Excuse me. All right. So as you can see, looking at our problem here, we have some empty spaces. I'm going to put in placeholder zeros so that I can easily visualize what I'm doing. So I'm going to put one right here because this was an empty place value, I'm also going to throw one right here. Okay, so now I can see that I'm adding 1 plus 0, which is 1. 3 plus 6 gives me 9. Bring down my decimal point. And we have 5 plus 7 gives me 12. 1 plus 1 plus 0 gives me a 2. So I can see that 15 and 31 hundredths plus 7 and 6 tenths is equal to 22 and 91 hundredths. Let's go ahead and do one last problem using subtraction. Okay, so I have 74 and 15 hundredths minus 15 and 3 tenths. So I'm going to start by putting 74 and 15 hundredths. I'm going to line up my next number by the decimal point. So I have 15 and 3 tenths. And I'm subtracting. So got a blank space there. I'm going to go ahead and throw a 0 in it. Now it's easier to see what I am subtracting. So I have 5 minus 0 gives me 5. 1 minus 3 I can't do, so I need to regroup. So I'm going to borrow from my 4 here. Now I have 11 minus 3, which gives me an 8. And now we have 3 minus 5, which we can't do. So I'm going to borrow from our 7. 13 minus 5 gives me 8 as well, I believe. Yep, it's an 8. And 6 minus 1 gives me 5. So I know that 74 and 15 hundredths minus 15 and 3 tenths is 58 and 85 hundredths. And I can check this just by adding this back to that, just like we do normally when we add and subtract. And that is all. The important things to remember when you're adding and subtracting decimals is to first line up the numbers by the decimal point and to put in placeholder zeros if you need them, because they help a lot. They help you visualize a little bit better. And that has been Math Corner with Miss Perry. I hope that I have been of some assistance, and I hope that you reach out if you do need more help. See you later.